it so happened that I came home, and this is a new apartment in London, just recently moved and everything else. But I shut the door when I came home the previous night very hard. The next morning, I had to get into office so that to be in time to start telling them the story about, or telling them the numbers about as they were in the meeting. I'm trying to open the door and I can't open the door, right? So I'm not being able to leave my apartment and I'm stuck. And I realized that, hey, in half an hour, this call is going to start and I need to get into office. Otherwise, I'm failing my team. So I stay on the first floor of an apartment. I'm like, how do I get out? How do I get out? I open the window, look down, stand on the ledge and jump. In the US banks, right? So obviously you had Merrill Lynch combined and with Bank of America. And the two left was effectively Morgan Stanley and Goldman. And we used to have a ticker on one of our screens where you're seeing the Goldman stock and the Morgan Stanley stock. And we said, hey, listen, first Morgan will go, then we'll go. So we'll follow that trend, right? So it was constantly on our screens that we were keeping. And it was very difficult to concentrate. You have to, again, be agnostic to the location you work in. That's something that, after I left London and moved to Dubai, I felt location is like the most irrelevant thing out of the whole thing, right? Means
Welcome guys to Conversations Cafe. We are in Dubai. Conversations Cafe is a show that brings ordinary Indians to you who've done extraordinary work. They are people just like you and me. They just strive for more. They worked harder. And most importantly, they made the right career choices. The one question that we ask everybody at All25 Inside IIM is this: do you invest in yourself enough? It's not necessary that you need to work so much to earn money also, right? So why investment banking?
so listen, it was not for the money at all, right? Money at the end of the day is a number in the bank account. How much you can't spend most of what you earn. Right?
Every rich person says that, by the way, guys. Please ensure that you have enough money first. After that, you can make claims like these. So, I mean, with respect to iBanking, and that's something that everybody wants to always know, which is your most memorable deal? Just to give people sense of the scale and the impact of the decision of either merging a company, demerging a company, doing a leverage buyout, whatever, right? Any examples?
Yeah, so listen, the easiest one to give is one of the first deals to do, right? And, I was, again, blessed or unfortunate, whichever way you want to take it, that I joined investment banking in 2008, just a month and a half before Lehman went bust, right? So, and I joined the financial institution space. So I was helping financial institutions merge, raise capital, so right in the thick of the storm, effectively. Within the first month that I was working in Goldman, literally every European bank, and I was in the London office, so every European bank needed capital raise, needed some kind of rescue bailout from the government or something like that. So I was the client, and thankfully throughout my career in Goldman, when I was in FIG, I kind of had as a client. They needed a government bailout from the Dutch government, and we stand on the precipice of something similar, where SVB happened on Friday, and the government bailout's probably happening over this weekend, and it'll get announced tomorrow. Something similar was happening every weekend for almost 2.5 months during 2008, right? So it was one of those weekends where my bosses had all traveled to Amsterdam, and they were going to be in the room with the board of with potentially the regulator and the state. And I was running a model and had to kind of sit in office and kind of provide them inputs. It so happened that I came home, and this is a new apartment in London, just recently moved and everything else. But I shut the door when I came home the previous night very hard. The next morning, I had to get into office so that to be in time to start telling them the story about, or telling them the numbers about as they were in the meeting. I'm trying to open the door and I can't open the door, right? So I'm not being able to leave my apartment and I'm stuck. And I realized that, hey, in half an hour, this call is going to start and I need to get into office. Otherwise, I'm failing my team. So I stay on the first floor of an apartment. I'm like, how do I get out? How do I get out? I open the window, look down, stand on the ledge and jump. And I get down on my knees, feet and kind of run to office. So I go in and I tell my colleagues there that, sorry, I am 10 minutes late. This is what happened. They said, dude, are you stupid, right? What did you just do, right? Means the police could have taken you into PI, like they thought you were stealing or something like that. But at that time, letting my team down felt like a big thing not to do, right? Means they needed me at that time. We were all going to work the whole weekend. We worked 36 hours straight that weekend. And, it felt that not being there for my team just because my door is locked and, I do not know why it's locked, when it'll get open on a weekend on London, finding someone was going to be almost impossible. So this was the best alternative. And thankfully I didn't break my bones. Everything worked out fine. And, but being there for my team at that time felt nice. We announced the deal on Monday with getting 10 billion euros of recapitalization from the state government. And interestingly, no one published this later, but all the European states that actually would have done an IRR on each of their state bailouts, they made tons of money, right? All the states kind of made, more than 15, 18% IRR on each of this, including the US. In a way, it was an amazing private equity play as well from all the states that they put money in these banks and then recovered in multiples later. But yeah, it was one of those interesting moments where you did your first deal within a month. It was this landmark transaction, and that had a little story associated with me jumping off the first floor to get there in office at time, right? So
since you spoke about the global financial crisis, did you feel threatened with respect to your job or your salary or bonuses, etc.? Because I mean, I know you said money wasn't important for you, but I'm sure those things would have crossed your mind at that time.
No, listen, it's hard not to, right? You're in your second or third month in a new country, in a new job. You're seeing your colleagues, your friends get laid off left, right, and center. It was a weird thing at that time, in the US banks, right? So obviously you had Merrill Lynch combined and with Bank of America. And the two left was effectively Morgan Stanley and Goldman. And we used to have a ticker on one of our screens where you're seeing the Goldman stock and the Morgan Stanley stock. And we said, hey, listen, first Morgan will go, then we'll go. So we'll follow that trend, right? So it was constantly on our screens that we were keeping, and it was very difficult to concentrate. But thankfully, Goldman had that thing about the way they approached it. They didn't want to touch any of the new joinees. They said these guys are like peanuts in the ocean in any case, so it doesn't matter. So they didn't want to kind of harm or make any of the juniors redundant, and they made that very clear and communicated that. So it allowed us to kind of stay a little bit calm and focused. All the redundancies that happened was at the senior level, so thankfully we were able to scap through that one. Right?
Okay, moving on, Gautam. What do you do now at Dubai Holdings, and how is it different from your investment banking avatar? How is it different from a profile perspective and scale perspective?
So when doing investment banking, at some point you realize that you're at the end of the day an advisor, right? So you are kind of making all the right recommendations and doing everything for the client as a fiduciary by recommending the right trades, the right moves. But you're not really acting on it, right? So you're not actually putting where your money where your mouth is in most situations. That I realized even during my tenure at Goldman. So I had moved towards the back end of my career in Goldman to the principal side where I was investing part of Goldman's balance sheet. So that kind of led to this role where I said, hey, listen, I enjoy this doing a lot more. So rather than being an advisor to the headline, I'll actually be the guy, executing the plan that gets to the headline, right? So so that's what triggered the move internally in Goldman to be on the principal side, as they call it. And then from that, Dubai happened. And in Dubai Holding, we are effectively an investment holding company for the leadership of Dubai. We invest capital for diversifying Dubai's economy and growing Dubai's economy. The transactions are not materially different to what I was doing in Goldman. It's still investing. It's only putting capital at play where you are actually a fiduciary of the capital, and therefore any losses you take could effectively have ramifications to yourself. As an advisor, you don't have that because at the end of the day, you're recommending and someone else acts on it, right? So that's basically the big difference if I were to put it in layman's terms.
Any interesting work that you've done recently that is public that you'd like to talk about?
So the good thing about moving away from a big setup like Goldman to a setup like Dubai Holding, not that Dubai Holding is small, we are 20,000 plus people, but the investments team is a relatively small team, is the breadth of opportunities you can work on, right? So in Goldman, like I said, I started in financial institutions, so I was focused only on working on that space. Then I moved to prop real estate, and I was working only on the real estate space. here, the breadth has been from, working on real estate and hospitality hotels, buying them in Europe for my company. But it also involved doing, small operational things which you don't normally think about, right? So, you're in Dubai, you've seen IIM Dubai, which is the wheel here. So I was heavily involved in how that, got financed, for example, and how that project eventually stood up. My friends kept asking me how it kind of played out and things like that. There's the theme parks here. Again, I was heavily involved in the financing of that theme park. So you get involved in a lot more, that at the grassroots level than just being high level on a deal, right? So that kind of also is exciting in some way because you've kind of done the deal, but now you have to create value from that deal also, right? So how do you do that, right? Get into the details, spend time with the management team, identify places where you can grow revenue, cut costs, do bolt-on acquisitions. All of that is quite exciting, right? And that's where, when you sit on the board of these companies, you're guiding management through these different journeys. So I think that's the learnings that you maybe would have not had in a company like if I had stayed out in Goldman. And that I'm very blessed that I had this opportunity to come here and work on such opportunities.
I think you have done more than enough justice to the build-up that I made during the introduction. Now, let's focus on the times when you've struggled in your career. I'm sure that it's not always been simple and smooth sailing.
Of course, yeah.
So any mistakes that you made in your career or areas where you have struggled and something that maybe we can learn from?
Like I said, during the '08 crisis, or even when I moved to Dubai, right, means initially when you move into a role, you think of it, no matter what the employer tells you when you're joining a company, the actual experience will be very different to the experience that was sold to you, right? So it's almost never the same. There are two ways of doing that, right? When you land in that job, you either kind of accept it for what it is or you fight it, right? Now, both of them have their pros and cons. I'll be honest about it, right? So when I landed in London, I accepted it. Right? I said, okay, listen, whatever it is, I'll accept it. If it is this, it's challenging and everything else. And that felt like a challenge at that time because during '08 and the GFC, for example, people were moved around, put in different locations, put in different teams temporarily. You were not doing the core job you signed up to do. And you had to accept that as part and parcel of the journey, right? And either you could fight it or you accept it. At that time, I chose to accept it, and that had its own frustrations. And maybe in hindsight, if I had fought it, I'd got a better outcome out of that. But accepting it also taught me a lot, and I made some of my best friends in that other setup that I went, right? And they're still today very good friends of mine. So, like you said, everything happens for a reason, and I give that as a good reason for that to have happened. When I came here, it was not exactly what I had thought it was going to be, and so I said, this time I'll fight it. And again, this time also it worked out. So I've been lucky and blessed in that way, and I keep thanking my stars for that. Is that when I fought it, and I said, hey, listen, this is what I thought my role was. This is not really what I'm doing today. So it eventually became what I wanted to become of it, right? So, and it's even beyond more of that. So the learning that I would kind of share in that is that accepting it or fighting it, whatever you do it like with the full energy you want to go with it, right? But if you go half-heartedly in either approach, you're not going to make it work out for yourself. I think like either you accept it and then fully accept it with full peace that this is what you're going to do, and you're going to live with that, right? Or if you want to fight it with full pace and be prepared for the consequences of that also, right? So it could go for your way, it could not go your way, right? And be prepared for that consequence. But do whatever you want to do, give it, the full grit of what you need to do with it, right? So
if you were to look at an alternate life where you are probably still working in India, do you ever think about that? Given that you've been away from the country for so long, what would you be doing if you were in India? And have you ever felt any FOMO about not being part of, say, India's startup journey in some sense?
I'll answer the question in two parts, okay, for you. So one is, what would I have rather done than what I am done? I genuinely believe had sports and sports-related pieces been as lucrative a career option back in the time when I started or was thinking through my career, I would have probably made a career in some kind of sports, whether playing sport or if I was good enough, or being in sports management or something like that. Because again, you go to the things that you enjoy doing, and like I said, I like making headlines. I like the adrenaline rush that I get playing sport or following sport is unmatched, right? So if I had to start all over again, and had I been born in this time and running things, then I would have probably tried to do something in the sports thing. To the point on being back in India and the startup, right? So again, split that into two pieces. There was a time when I moved to London, and this is where it was the financial crisis. Things were like very tough, right, at that time for people because the general environment was tough, right, in the financial services industry. You didn't know when the job market would kind of improve, when growth will come back. It was literally people were trying to save their jobs all the time. At that time, I was very keen to return to India because India felt at that time still at the right journey of growth and everything else. Most of my friends know I used to kind of come back to India on holidays and interview left, right, and center all the time, right? Thinking of, hey, I want to go back to India again for all the good things, and I'm blessed that it didn't happen, right? So and today, but when I think about it, you have to again be agnostic to the location you work in. That's something that after I left London and moved to Dubai, I felt location is like the most irrelevant thing out of the whole thing, right? Means if you have the job profile and the team and the drive in the company, wherever that location is, be it in Kenya, be it in Nigeria, be it in London, be it in New York, it doesn't matter, right? Because at the end of the day, like I said, the only difference is the people you're interacting with. And yes, you will not go out and have pav bhaji in the evening. You will have a burger in London, but like fine, that's the only real difference, right? And for someone like me who doesn't care about food much, it doesn't matter what I eat actually. So taking that location out then therefore doesn't matter, right? So therefore, if I had the right role to move to India, I would move in a heartbeat. But that's not come about yet. Maybe something better is due at some point later.
Awesome. This has been amazing, Gautam. Thank you so much,
Thank
Gautam.
you.
Guys, a big round of applause, please, for Gautam.